5 or so minutes talking about the concept of data centralization for your organizations. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time, and I hope that the next hour will be valuable to you and that you will at least start thinking about this concept and how it might apply to your organization. So the agenda for today is as follows. I will start by giving an overview of data centralization. What does it mean to centralize your data? And for this concept to make sense, we'll need to take a few things into consideration. The first being, what is your objective as an organization? What is your business question? What decisions do you want to make? What decisions do you want to make? And what is the nature of your data? And most importantly, where is your data located? And then next, I will look at describing the process of centralizing data. I will talk about some of the tools and techniques involved in building effective data pipelines. I then want to speak about data governance, which is essentially a process of establishing accountability and authority in all aspects in and around your data. Here we will cover elements such as security, privacy, reliability, integrity, accuracy, and other areas. And then myself and Mpho Mafune will then take you through some successful client journeys and show you how our involvement as Opti-Num Solutions has helped our clients to adopt data-driven strategies. And then my other colleague, Leo Brits, will talk further on how we deploy data centralization processes. And lastly, I will conclude this webinar, and then we have a Q&A session at the end. Right. So I think a good place to start would be to ask you firstly to think about what level does your organization fall into in terms of being data-driven. This diagram is going to show 6 levels where we have a level 0. So a level 0 is when your data sources are not up to date and your data is captured manually. And then we have a level 1 where you have isolated projects, isolated data projects, and there is uncoordinated data across your organization. And then we have a level 2 where you at least have some secure data warehouse where all your data is stored. And then we have a level 3 where you have varying levels of access on business units and levels of expertise. And then we have a level 4 where you have governed data and dedicated data teams. And then lastly, we have a level 5 where you are integrating data and insights into new business policies and processes. So this will be the first step in us identifying some of the key issues in your organization. So as we go on with this webinar, please keep this slide in mind, and hopefully at the end we will know hopefully at the end you will know where you are and what steps you need to take to mitigate your issues. So when we're talking about data, we are referring to customer information that, when monitored correctly, it can provide valuable insights into your existing and potential customers. Therefore, data serves an integral part in forming a business strategy. I think we must remember that customers are of paramount importance to our organizations. So it is crucial to be aware and cater for their needs and expectations. For example, customers want to be treated as people and not just numbers. As such, they expect personalized interactions across all business channels in your organization. This is extremely important in winning the customer's loyalty to your business, and therefore your organization's ability to provide these meaningful and personalized interactions depends on the availability of accurate and comprehensive data, which will enable you to understand how best to engage with your customers, make confident business decisions, and add value to your organization. However, this is often not the case with many organizations. For example, we have clients who approach us to see if a data-driven approach could be adopted into optimizing their product portfolio and understanding their customer base. So they come with challenges ranging from having too many products and customers to keep track of, to basic methods of understanding customer and product performance, and the need for more dimensions and insight in their analysis. So often their data tends to be isolated, organized by, I say it tends to be isolated and it's organized by internal departments, and it's inaccessible by other parts of the organization. So these isolated departments need different information to do their work, and those individual collections of often overlapping but inconsistent data are stored and collected in various forms and end up creating many standalone systems. So as a result, this hinders the process of gleaning deep, actionable insights from organizational data and creates a barrier to like a holistic view of your company data. And then you find that as one department collects and stores its own data for its own purpose, it creates its own data silo, and that's resulting in a lack of coordination with other departments, introducing inefficiencies and redundant processes, which lead to a lack of trust in the quality of the data and an overall loss of perspective in the organization. Furthermore, as the organization evolves, its sources of data also multiply, resulting in more complications ranging from inaccurate or duplicated data to incorrect filing of compliance information. Which brings us to this concept of data centralization. So data centralization is essentially a process of collecting all your organizational data into one central location or repository so that it's accessible to your entire organization. It means that you're bringing data out of those respective silos and store it in a way that enables you to get a 360-degree view of your business and customers. So while this may sound like a simple concept, it places your organization in a very powerful position because it is the first key step to taking ownership of your data. So having data available and accessible to the entire organization means that you will be more transparent. There will be more transparency within the organization and within all the departments. And it means that your organization will have access to a single version of the truth, regardless of different functional units. There'll be more communication and collaboration within the organization, and by also applying a good data governance framework, you'll ensure that the data is secure and there is accountability for every change in the data. So centralizing enables your organization to align business strategy to prioritize areas that require more strategic, tactical, and operational decision making at different ranks, such as top executive, senior management, and associate level. So, and then it also helps to simplify by link. It also helps to simplify the linking process and to manage data related to products, customers, assets, suppliers, as well as employees. So now let's look at the process of data centralization and the processes that are involved when you want to centralize your data. So the first stage will be your data sources that contain your enterprise data in various formats. This could be databases, web app servers, sensor data, etc. Um, it it's all data in its raw form, basically. So the next phase will be the staging phase, where data is extracted from the sources and transformed. This is where we implement ETL and ELT processes, which I'll talk about in detail in the coming slides. In stage 3, it's where we set up a data warehouse, which is a central location where the transformed data will be stored for further analysis. And then we have stage 4, where the analytics of the transformed data takes place. In this stage, we can perform business analytics or implement machine learning models to gain insights from the data. And then lastly, we have the deployment stage, where you get outputs such as operational reports and so on. However, I want to focus on the first 3 stages and talk more about. Not sure if my line is still okay.
Yeah,
So
I can still hear you. It's just your screen is blank on my side. Not quite sure if it's the same with everyone. Mm. I don't know if you'd like for me, sorry, to project in the meantime, because on my side it is blank.
okay. My second screen just died. I think we have a power issue here. Can you project from your screen, please?
Yeah, I can project. Just give me a second. Um, I'm just setting up my screen in the meantime.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Paul. Um, if you could just go back a slide. Right, thanks. So here I was still discussing the steps that we take, or the process of data centralization. And I highlighted that I want to focus on the first 3 stages, which is how we can extract data from the data sources, make transformations, and store the data in a data warehouse. Next slide. Thanks. So I will start with an ELT process, an ETL process, which stands for extraction, transformation, and loading. And this diagram is a typical ETL process flow, where you have an enterprise data from your source system, and you have your target system, which in our case is our data warehouse. So the first step is to extract the data from the source by setting up either a batch process or a streaming process, depending on the data you're extracting. And the transformation stage is essentially applying your business logic to the raw data to shape that data in a form where business can draw useful insights. For example, suppose your organization wants to analyze how many employees have exceeded their their monthly, or rather their, sorry about that. So if, for example, your organization wants to analyze how many employees have exceeded their sales target within 1 year of them joining the company, you can already see the different dimensions of data, such as employee personal details from your HR system, and the sales generated by each employee from your sales system. You can bring both those data sets into your warehouse and transform, or rather apply your transformation logic so that it can combine both the data sets and create a curated data set of employee name and maybe the number of sales per employee. The key element to take note of is that you are extracting the entire data from the source, bringing it to the transformation logic, and the output of the transformation logic is the data is only the data that you need for your target system. Also, the transformation happens at the source. It happens at the source. So ELT utilizes the computation power of the source system to perform the transformations. Now, there are some pros and cons to that, and I will discuss them as well. Please share the next slide for me, Paul. I think it's the slide before this one. Thank you.
Oh, I think there's a lag. No worries.
Okay, so yeah, next I want to discuss the ELT process, which stands for extraction, loading. Hello, can you guys hear me? I'm sorry about that. We had an unannounced schedule of maintenance and they just switched off our power for no reason. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, can hear you loud and clear now, Templani.
Okay, thank you guys. And I think I'll be able to share my screen again. Can you all see my screen now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I'm sorry about that. Can I just quickly move on to where I was? So here I was just discussing the difference between ETL and ELT. So here I was still talking about ELT, where I was saying that it's basically different to the ETL process in that you are in the second stage. That's where you are loading the data and then applying the transformation logic to the loaded data. So unlike the ETL, where transformation of the data happens at the source, ELT takes advantage of the computational power and resource of your data warehouse to perform the transformation. So it's commonly implemented when you're dealing with real-time data. So suppose you want to understand what is your product inventory. So you might want to run some real-time analytics on your inventory to understand how you can meet your customers' demands. In that case, you might want to use some sensor data to identify how your products are in your inventory in real time. Another example would be that maybe you want to stream some real-time data from a website or social media platform to perform sentiment analysis for a stock or an asset. In both examples, you can set up a streaming process to collect real-time data for your analysis, load it into your warehouse, and then after applying your business logic to the data, you can load it back to the data warehouse. So in terms of choosing which process to go for, really depends on what your what are you trying to achieve as your organization? What question are you trying to answer? So for companies that are subject to privacy regulations, they need to remove or mask or encrypt specific data fields to protect the privacy of their customers. In this case, an ETL provides like greater data security because it performs transformations that safeguard privacy data before putting the data in the data warehouse. It's also cost effective because it only transfers data that that's been transformed into the data warehouse. Therefore, organizations can save the storage costs by storing only the data they need within the data warehouse, whereas ETL loads all your data into the data warehouse, including the data that you don't need. So those are the cases where you could choose to use an ETL. And then on the other hand, with ELT provides you with greater flexibility because it does not require you to develop complex pipelines before data is ingested. You simply save all your data in the data warehouse without having to transform and structure it first. And immediately it's accessible to all the departments in the organization. Also, because it doesn't require you to transform the data to a special format before saving it in the data warehouse, ELT can instantly ingest data, and then users no longer need to wait for data to be cleansed or modified. And lastly, with ELT, users need to only transform the data required for a specific analysis. And they can flexibly transform the data in different ways to produce specific matrix, forecasts, and reports. Whereas with ETL, it requires the modification of the entire pipeline if previously decided structures do not, for example, allow for new types of analysis. So that's those are the two differences between. So as I mentioned previously, that each of these processes you choose really depend on your business logic. There is no ETL specific tool or ELT specific tool. You can use the same tool to perform either processes. So now, in all these processes, we have covered data governance and supervision plays a crucial role. Right, so it's essentially a process of managing the flow of data to stakeholders who need it in order to provide accountability, manage access control, and optimize role-based security. So during this process, you must identify important data across your organization to ensure that it is of high quality. And this means that your organization's business drivers will dictate the data you need to be carefully controlled and to what extent in your organization's data governance strategy. So a good example of a data governance strategy requires you to define things like where your data is stored, who has or should have access to it, what is the current state of your data, what you want to do with the data, and what needs to happen for the data to meet your goals. And this will help to address data quality checks to ensure that the data is correct and consistent, and then data availability to ensure that data is available and easy to consume by business functions who require it. Data usability to ensure that data is clearly structured, documented, and labeled, and it's consistent with the tools used by business users. And then data integrity as well, to ensure that data retains its essential quality, even if it's stored, transformed, transferred, and viewed across different platforms. And then lastly, data security, to ensure that data is classified accordingly it's classified according to its sensitivity, and defining processes for safeguarding and preventing data loss and leakage. So essentially, I've described the kind of process or the kind of approach that we as Opti-Num Solutions take when dealing with our clients. When we approach problems, it's quite important for us to have them be impactful along the way. So we start where we get the highest level of value, and that could be, say, a project that helps you answer why a certain decline in your organization and what are the root causes. We'll start there, but the plan is to have a long-term strategy around putting your data and all platforms centralized. And this is because if you try to centralize your data, but not getting any value from it, this is a lot. It's a lot of risk from a business perspective. You can invest in a data centralization project, but at the end, it's like moving data from one location to another with no value or no impact to your organization. We acknowledge that not every client or organization appreciates the essence of having centralized, clean, and governed data until they have seen the value with the data itself. So our approach is to uncover that value in the data, and you'll see this as I walk you through some of our client journeys. So the first client I'll start with is a property financing client, and our journey with them has enabled them to become a data-driven organization. Part of this journey included Opti-Num Solutions' contribution to the client's best practices and data management. It underpinned the implementation of a business-critical Power BI dashboarding solution, essential for driving evidence-based decisions and improving their operational insights. The dashboard solutions we developed with them enabled visibility across the business matrix, and the solution not only catered to their individual business needs, but also created a digital bridge across departments, removing the key data dependencies. So this process involved passing the raw data through an ELT process, which is then saved in a curated database for which is leveraged by the reporting and the dashboarding. So yeah, our next client journey is quite an interesting one, and it is with a property client. I'd like to ask my colleague Mpho Mafune to take us through this one. Mpho?
Yeah, thanks, Thembelani. And yeah, just echoing in terms of what you've highlighted so far in regards to a data centralization journey with some of our clients, I would like to highlight a journey we took with the property client. And this journey didn't actually start off as a data centralization journey. It actually started off as a business impact journey. So the client reached out to us. It was around 2018, and they asked if we could build pricing models for them to figure out, okay, how could they price their rental units in order to maintain a healthy level of vacancies, right? And with that, we were able to then build the model and start recommending rental prices. We were quite effective at the time, but the underlying core of the data pipeline was not really robust and complete. And at that time, the client wasn't quite ready to invest in a data centralization project. And so the way we approached the journey was by giving value from a business perspective, building the relevant models and catered ETL processes for those models, and then displaying the data to the end users so they can use them to then inform their decisions. And there's quite a few projects we delivered along the way. A big one to highlight is one that we delivered in 2020 when the pandemic hit. And at this time, there was a lot of uncertainty in the organization, right, in terms of how are they going to pivot as we enter the different lockdown levels within the country at the time. We knew the property industry and the market would be impacted greatly when people weren't allowed to move and actually weren't allowed to work at the time. So what we did then was actually build a scenario analysis model, just figuring out what the impact of lockdown would be on the client's revenues over time. And then with this project, we were able to further unpack some of the data gaps within the organization. So some of the information they had in regards to their customers didn't quite sit in one database. They actually had some of it living in transactional databases and software, right? And with that and correlating and trying to get this insight in terms of how should they plan for their organization throughout lockdown, we then sort of start uncovering to the organization where the missing pieces are in terms of the data centralization pipeline. And with this, it's important to note that a big gap, especially in business when motivating for a data centralization project, is actually allowing the different stakeholders to understand the importance of the project. And as we showed, impact in terms of what the data could do in their planning and the strategic view of the organization, we were able to, and it came leading up to the past few years, right, as we built different models, as we worked to, in subset of projects, to centralize their information, it came to light that the organization was actually then willing to invest in proper data warehousing, proper data centralization. And at the moment, we're actually working with them to build data governance structures and figuring out who the people and the processes should be along the way. But as we moved over time from 2018 till now, we've been adding value in different ways and ensuring that the impact that the data gives to the organization is visible. And we've done so by building churn models, by building dashboards, and using similar structures as per the case study that was shown by Timberlani. So this is just another view in regards to the way we've taken the journey in terms of data centralization and putting that at the heart of the organization while driving impact along the way. And so with that, I would like to hand over to Leo, and Leo will then sort of unpack how to look at scaling up data centralization. I spoke more from a business impact, but Leo will allow us to see how one can scale up and how one can do so with one of the more powerful tools. So I'll hand over to Leo for that.
Great. Thanks so much for transition. So great, I'd like to just talk very briefly about how you can operationalize your data centralization, and try to touch on a couple of points that has happened during this webinar so far, and how that links to some of the tech, and kind of bring everything together in an operational sense. So one way or one solution that we can use to operationalize these data models is to leverage the capabilities of the MATLAB production server. The MATLAB production server is a great way to easily deploy and scale these data centralization processes, as well as, of course, other enterprise analytics models. And this can be done on premises or in the cloud. This allows you to have deployed endpoints to your data, which helps ensure the standardized quality checks are in place before data is used within any of your models, your analytics, as well as your reporting, thus ensuring consistency and linking back up to the data governance aspect. It also allows end users the ability to be assured that the data that they retrieve from these centralized data warehouses, or once your ETL processes have gone through curation, that the data that they retrieve is accurate and it's reliable, and that they're always working with a single version of the truth every time you do their work. And these data or models are governed, really helping to enforce the accountability of the models. And this just helps make a really nice ecosystem that can be scaled really, really easily across your enterprise, across many teams that are managing their own smaller data sources and curated data warehouses. And that's basically just a quick introduction of how you can use this MATLAB production server to operationalize your data centralization, whether it's on premises, in the cloud, and then accessing these through many different platforms, whether it's through web APIs, whether it's through third-party dashboards such as Power BI, as we've showed before. But there are so many different solutions that really become case dependent and organization dependent, depending on where you are within your data journey, as well as how big your organization is. So this is just one way to do that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Leo, and thanks, Mpho. Okay, so yeah, in conclusion, we've looked at defining data centralization. What is data centralization? And with that, we looked at some of the problems that you encounter with data and why you'd need to centralize. And then we looked at the process of centralizing data, where we were comparing ETL process and ELT processes. And then we looked at a data governance framework and talked about why it's important to have a data governance framework within your data centralization. And then we looked at some client journeys. And lastly, we looked at how we can scale data centralization. So with that, we have reached the end of our webinar, and we will open the floor for a Q&A session. And then other than that, I have put some contacts for us. So if you would like to contact us directly, my email is there. And then you can also reach us at support@optinum.co.za. And then you can also visit the MathWorks website. That's where you'll find a lot of content there in terms of videos and examples. And then there are also some training courses available if you are interested. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you very much. I think we will take questions. Any questions on the floor? Okay. Right. Thank you guys. I think we don't have any questions. All right. Once again, thanks for attending. Thank you, Michelle, for organizing the webinar for us. And yeah, thanks everyone. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, Timbaloni.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll be sending out a recording of the webinar along with the presentation in the next coming days. So just keep an eye out for that. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tim.